So yes, welcome everyone. Welcome to another Sunday at the round table. I am Mikey Nita, your host, alongside Lass Crawford, another co-host. We'll be joined by Mr. Rattigan, who is also a co-host here, and Patrick McCarthy. Brothers, we have with us Sister Valerie Nita and a special guest, Mr. John Horton. No need to do any more introduction because John is known to the world, as a former teacher, activist, party leader, among other things. So he's just going to spend some time with us this evening as we continue our exploration of the topic, constitutional reform. But while doing that, I think we should bring Garvey into the conversation because last Thursday we celebrated 136 years since the birth of this great black man. So the question is, in terms of this conversation about constitutional reform and what have you, can or should Garvey inform the new Jamaica that we are talking about, the new constitution? Should Garvey philosophy be a, a contributing element in terms of agreeing to a philosophy, the type of Jamaica that we want? Well, I pose this question to you. Should Garveyism play a more prominent role in terms of Jamaican society?
But of course, it should. It's very important. Um, I don't know if there were any celebrations in Jamaica for his birthday. If it was very low key. We have always had to struggle to even have it taught in school. Although he's a national hero, no emphasis is put on Garvey's teachings. He's recognized all over the world, but we don't seem to be able to um, pay tribute to him. So, yes, it is the principles that Garvey taught um, of nation building, of black pride, um, ought to be a part of the Constitution, especially when it comes to um, the power of any government to sell and dispose of our assets to foreigners, to control our beaches, to have foreigners or even wealthy Jamaicans exclude us from our beaches. So yes, the answer is definitely yes.
John?
Well, I would like to when you briefed me before, you told me I didn't know it was the conversation was set in a constitutional framework. But how my mind work, how many of us watched the football match this morning, the women's FIFA um, final? I wake up early to watch. I watch all the games, and this game was an outstanding game. The reason why I bring it up is because the style of play is a new style of play which is not really well known. The Spanish, I think them call it tiki-taka or something like that. I was looking it up this morning. But it's coming out of the Spanish football. They developed that, especially at Barcelona. And I'm a deep lover of Barcelona football. And the reality is that even though it's been around, it's not well known. It's not prevalent everywhere. And what the game demonstrates today is by imposing this technique on the match, they were able to overrun the opposition. I say all of this to say that without going back into every detail of what Garvey represents, it's the same concept to me. The concept of using something that can transform the country, which is what Garvey was about. We're not taking every detail, the philosophy of Garvey, the upliftment of the black man, the launching of a party that represents the working people, the launching of a newspaper to educate the people about themselves, and the fact that he went international. All of these elements are, to me, a new way of dealing with an old problem. It's such a pity when you tell us that Garvey was 136 years old, that today in Jamaica, many of the issues which he philosophized about and organized about and campaigned about, went to prison, and all the suffering that he went under. We still have to address those issues of the role of black people in our own country, the poverty, the rights, the political parties, which are, in my opinion, highly suspect. It's not, if they were doing a good job, we wouldn't have some of the issues that we constantly have today. So that's my take on it. I believe that the Spanish team demonstrate that by imposing their style of play, their technique, in the way that Garvey tried to impose his style of politics and organizing, they were able to run roughshod over England and over the other teams. I mean, if you watch that game, you will see how outstanding the play was. It's not so much the scoreline at the end, but that they dominated the play right through, especially in the first half. So I use that as an example of what Garvey would represent in today's Jamaica. And if we are looking to it, just to hear you say, Valerie, that it's a struggle to get Garvey taught in schools. Why should that be a struggle? I was a history teacher, and although I had my own way when I was teaching, 15 years of teaching, of course, I taught history the way that the poor man would see it. I tried to make sure that we represented the interests of the masses. And Garvey was a significant element of that history. So yes, it's relevant. Yes, it brings a new way of looking at the world. And yes, we should try to embrace what is good and positive, which virtually all of it can be embraced in Jamaica.
Lasse, what do you think, Lasse?
I think it's very important. I share the views of Valerie and John. But I also believe that one of the reasons why it's important to me was that Garvey was teaching in his time that we should, as Black people, believe in ourselves and that we could chart a course that is relevant to us, right? And a course in which the ordinary people could participate. I think participation is the important issue for me is him because what's that?
Somebody's phone.
Somebody's
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead,
because
Lars.
in the under the present political system, I think one of the major things that is lacking is a rule and a recognition that the ordinary people can participate and help to chart a way forward for themselves and for the country.
Wilfred Rattigan, WhatsApp audio.
Ratigan, Patrick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can
The
you hear me?
question, yeah, yes. The question before us is, the constitutional reform and should Garvey be, how can Garvey be part of this process? The new Jamaica that will emerge from this constitutional reform. Should Garvey be central to that, or what's your view, Mr. Ratigan? The same question to you.
Well, first of all, let me just, say greetings to, the entire panel, yourself, Jonathan, Valerie, um, Ratigan, Lass. And, when I came in, I was hearing John finishing up on his statement. And, I, I, I never heard the question before, but having heard it now, I was just thinking how appropriate for John to be here, to really speak on that, because John mentioned about his time as a teacher and so on, and his own method of teaching. And I think that goes to the heart of what the problem is, that a foundational piece to really nation building, which is really what the Constitution should be about, right? It's really about really getting to the heart of, really what needs to be taught in schools, what needs to be the focus, and so on. And Garvey certainly represented the downtrodden, the underserved, the most impactful era of our country, or of our people rather, right? That was neglected. And certainly the teachings of Garvey would definitely, right, move in the right direction of really correcting a lot of what, a lot of the misjustice that has taken place, a lot of the colonial, shake a lot of the colonial past, and really put us more in terms of, where do we go from here as a nation? So absolutely something I absolutely support. And, teachers of the caliber of Jonathan and so many others who, I recall some of the days of their struggle and so on. And their struggle was our struggle, because it was a struggle for really, the vast majority of working people in Jamaica. So that's my piece for now.
Ratigan, what is your take?
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry to be late. I'm just joining the conversation, and so I'll just take an observer role right now before making any further comments.
Okay. I agree with the sentiment so far in terms of Garvey and what have you. But I must remind you that in 1921, Garvey gave a speech in which he said that he would be in debt, he would be a terror to the enemies of the Negro people. And when you look around, you don't see that terror. You don't see that terror. What we see is We see young blacks killing off each other. We see young black destroying black neighborhood. So it's something far away. What is really happening? Is it that there's no more teaching taking place amongst the youths? And where's this turn, is coming from? Because in the 70s, they had a very strong foundation, a very progressive period, where Garvey, him and his idea and philosophy were constantly in the public space. Today, it is a young black man who terrorizing working class neighborhood. What is driving this? What is really driving this? Why aren't we seeing more terror directed at the enemies of working class people, black people in Jamaica and elsewhere? Why not?
Well, basically, I mean, the crime evolves from the lack of social programs and the decline in the poorer youth accessing education, the lack of employment. Employment is provided by the private sector, and also the lack of resources for the poorer sector of Jamaica, those who manage to gain to access education, their inability to start a business because the overheads are so great. The banks are not lending money for that. They lend money for high-end vehicles for their elitist friends. And so they don't know anything about Garvey and Garvey's philosophies and the principles of Garvey, because we have that pathway has been closed, not active anymore. So, I mean, we could talk and talk and talk.
Well, if
we
I
haven't
can,
had a government.
sorry.
We haven't had a government for a long time that has pursued any policies to ensure that we build a society that all can access wealth. So that's where we are now.
But one looking in from the outside who said Jamaica is a black society. So you'd expect the black to be taking care of blacks. But that's not what's happening in Jamaica right now. Things change. Years ago, you could point to the Rasta community as one representative of Garvey. But what I see right now, I see the Rasta man now he has his star on Hollywood. He's now performing in dress and all sorts of stuff. So what's really happening? John, you're the historian. Can you tell us?
Well, I don't know if it's a problem of history, but I have my own views. It is absolutely true that the country has changed. When I was going to university, we had a big movement, or it became big, as part of the wider society representing what I would call transformative leadership is lacking. It's not just in Jamaica. It's a widespread situation. It's the same thing in the United States for the most part. There is no Malcolm X. There is no Martin Luther King. That is more. Those are more recent names that we can call. In South Africa, there's no you know, the ANC is under some serious pressure, and part of the pressure is internal. So the reality is that in many of these countries, including ours, there is a lack of transformative leadership. That's one factor. And transformative leadership can't work in abstract. You have to have institutions like what Valerie mentioned at the very start, the education system that we have. Students are not do not gravitate to social science. They gravitate to business. They gravitate to making money. Same thing here in America. Students are not interested too much. I mean, they will participate in, in things that help to make life better, vis-a-vis Black Lives Matter movement, or but it's not as broad a situation, or it's not as, people are not as involved in that kind of sense. And I think a big part of it, when we use the word government, I would like to use the word transformative government, transformative leadership is lacking. There's no direction in that respect. So that's one of the issues. It's not the only one, but I certainly believe the problems you point out are not unique to Jamaica.
The level of corruption.
I
The
want to say
level of
something on that too,
corruption,
Mikey.
yeah, that's part of it.
You
Those
last
are diffused when a big amount of money drop in front of you. You lose sight of social transformation, and it's all about me.
I think
so
part of
go
the
ahead.
problem, I agree with you, John, but I also think that part of the problem in our Jamaican context is that a wide cross-section, especially of our youths, have been shut out from accessing resources and social programs over the years that would draw them into society and help build them into responsible community people. And because they have been shut out from some of these programs for so long, a lot of them have turned to criminality and other ways of feeling a part of the society, right? And trying to lift themselves up. They have been so involved in criminality and other things that these things have become a way of life now. They can make money being outside of the mainstream of society. They can buy their own guns, which politicians used to supply them with outside of the mainstream of society. So a lot of these youths don't feel a part of any community anymore, don't feel a need to be a part of any community anymore, because they can chart their own way, right? Through criminal activities and all of those things. So it's hard to get them back in focus, thinking about community. I remember in our time, the communities were the important things to us. Regardless of what we were doing, there was a focus on building up our communities, right? And working with our communities to try make some progress. This generation, they have been outside of the mainstream of society for so long that they don't feel a part of the society. They can make their own money. They can do their own thing. So, I mean, that's why we have so much of the conflict, right? these guys don't feel a part of what's happening right anymore. And it's part of the political system that has caused this, right? The political system is not reaching them. The economic system is not reaching them. So they develop their own alternatives, right, and doing their own thing.
I think one should offer a qualification there, because it's not all youths involved in criminal activities. You're talking about a minority of youths, not all youths. So I think this generalization, which this government, the state is guilty of, is something that we should avoid. Don't you think, Mr. Radigan? Mr. Radigan?
Yeah, man, can't hear you.
Yeah. I'm
Just
saying that when you make this, when one made the statement that all youths are a generation of youths involved in crime, one need to qualify that, because it is not true that all youths are involved. Some youths, a minority of youths are involved. Isn't that your experience, Mr. Radigan?
that may very well be my experience, but I don't know if that's the experience of Jamaica, considering the fact that you have the ministry come out and say that they have over 200 gangs in Jamaica. So in terms of the numbers, 200 is a shocking number. Even if you only have a gang consisting of 4 members, that's still a shocking number. And as you know, gangs, generally speaking, they're not formed for good reasons. You have criminal intent that you can ascribe to them. But going back to the issue of corruption and the lack of unity, Marcus Garvey was of the position that blacks need to unite. I don't see anybody preaching that right now. We've strayed from that message. And there is a list of reasons we can give as to why people have strayed. But one of them is the corruption thing. And John mentioned something about the ANC in South Africa. And I have some familiarity with the ANC, seeing that I lived and worked in South Africa. Still have connections to South Africa for several years. 4.5 years, no, 3 years, I actually lived there. And there is an ANC proverb that is, well, it's facetiously ascribed to the ANC. And it's a politician saying, if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it. And and that's a theme that runs rampant throughout black countries. If I don't steal it, somebody else is going to steal it. So therefore, I should steal it because it's going to be stolen anyway. And you look at South Africa now with Ramaphosa, who's a billionaire by Western standards, not South African standards. And when he was elected, people were saying, well, the country is going to get on the right footing because as far as corruption, because there is no incentive for him to steal. Yet there have been many instances of allegations against him for financial crimes. And the same thing in Jamaica. The politicians have gone from looking out for the constituencies to looking out for themselves. And that message cascades to everyone within the community that, hey, you know what? I better look out for myself because nobody is looking out for me. And unless you can change that mindset, well, the way you change that mindset is you put the politicians in prison. And nobody is doing that. And until you start doing that, this is just going to be a recurrent theme where we'll sit here, we'll talk about it, we'll analyze, we'll dissect. But at the end of the day, if we don't do something about it, we'll be back at the next edition of Waterhouse Vibes talking about the same thing. So if you ask me what is one of the greatest impediments to the philosophies of Marcus Garvey, it is the ability of politicians to get away with corruption and for people to do absolutely nothing. The other problems, they're there. But if you have to start someplace, I say let's start there with the politicians putting them in prison.
Yeah. Yeah, if I may just jump in here and
Before you jump in, I want to welcome Mr. Herb Nelson to the discussion. Herb, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Thank you very much. I've had a rough time coming in simply because when you had the invite and you had 3 periods, it when you clicked on it, it actually activated the invite along with the rest of the StreamYard URL, and it
Okay.
wouldn't let me in.
All right.
So
Well, you're in now. You're in now. So
yeah, that's
yeah.
me being a dunce. I'm supposed to be more astute when it comes to cyber, but
All
that's
right.
all right.
All right.
But
Patrick.
I like the conversation I've been hearing, and I like the what we're presenting, because look, it's been how many decades since Garvey has passed on, and other than some of the things that Michael Manley did and some of the things that Eddie Siaga did, we're not seeing that transformative leadership you talk about, right? We're not seeing a creation of new organizations with a new path set forth for the masses of people in Jamaica for them to follow. So we're coming up short in the ideas department, and we're coming up very short in the leadership and motivation that's needed for the transformation you talk about yourself and John been referring to. So here you are, Garvey demonstrated that you have to create various organizations of the capitalist nature in order to bring a movement about and bring a mass of people along with that movement. We're not seeing that today. We're seeing people sitting around waiting on the government to give them handouts, right? Of all institutions, the government is not going to do it. They're not going to cut it. So no matter what happens, we have to find that leader amongst the all of us who are out there that can provoke thoughts and call people to action and get the kind of movement going so we can rid ourselves of the corruption and of all the fake leaders out there who have been leading us down the primrose path to nowhere. So that's my thought on what's needed. Leadership, very simple. And
Patrick. Patrick. Yeah, you were about to say something.
Yeah. Um, you know, when I think about the whole situation, my thing is that personally, I'm a avid student of history, right? And one of the things that's clear to me, absolutely clear, and to me, that's where all the answer lies. History is what has brought us to where we are. And that's the important reason why we study history, right? And we have to take an approach to history where the examination and deep thinking that we do about history must be done in a way that really facilitates us moving forward. All right. So history is something which a lot of times, some historians tend to pick and choose what they want to pick out of history, right? And focus on that. But the important thing is that history has all the answers. All the answers that we seek can be found historically. Um, you know, John spoke to a piece of it, right, in terms of the fact that what the experience has been in Jamaica has not been a unique one. It has been pretty much an international one for people who look like us, right? It has been one which has really thrown up leaders, and of course, the main leader we have been talking about is Garvey. Now, why is it that Garvey is so important to us? Because we can identify with what Garvey represented. We can identify with Garvey's teachings. But by the same token, we have not sought to use it. What has happened is, like I recall, right in our time, right, 1968, right? This was when you know, my early year of entering high school and all of that, right? And there it was. This was the same year when we have a black prime minister in power, Hugh Shearer, banning books, right? Banning progressive books, banning books which speak to Garvey's work and Garvey's teachings and all of that, right? Rather than find a way to get from this, right, or we incorporate this in our educational system, right? Here was the first black prime minister of Jamaica, banning books, right? Imprisoning people who really represented some of the very same principles that Garvey spoke to, right? Expelling people like Dr. Walter Rodney, right? Bringing people like Dr. Trevor Monroe up on charges and all of that stuff. So the thing about it is that we are the ones who really should be the ones determining where we go. Not no so-called leaders, because I don't see politicians as leaders, right? Politicians seek to represent you in office, right, and become part of a government, but it doesn't lead to the transformation of government. It doesn't necessarily lead to that transformation. So I don't see them as leaders. I more see them as rulers, right? I have my own thoughts in terms of this present regime, in terms of what's happening. Now, often I've heard reference made to, you know, the early time when Holness came to power, right? And the good things he had to say and all of that. But my thought is that he got in office and he really never have any way to address the problems. So him have to, you know, fill in pockets instead, right? Take care of himself, right? And that's the result we're seeing now. What happens then is that there's a trend of corruption across the government. That's not leadership. That has nothing to do with leadership. So can we keep talking about government as leadership, right? The leadership really comes from us coming up with people who are able to represent our own interests, right, in nation building, right? We're talking about constitutional reform, right? My thing is that is really a matter of replacing this constitution, not reforming it, because this constitution never began to speak to us, right? To begin with, it didn't speak to the majority of people in Jamaica, right? The majority of people who look like us. It really spoke to a social structure which really has a different kind of relationship when it comes to people like us. And it's all, the answer is all in our history. And it's the same thing across the world, right, with people who look like us. On the continent of Africa, right, in the United States, in England, all across the world. So the whole idea is that we have to have a strong educational system, because that in fact is what gonna be a crucial foundation to building, right, the world that we wanna see, building the Jamaica that we wanna see, right? Building a Jamaica where people not only survive, but they thrive and they develop. All right. So it's not about looking for any saviors, right? There's no savior to come, right? We are gonna have to eke out the savior for ourselves. That's really what it amounts to.
Yeah, but I'm hearing everything that's being said, but we need to be practical. Yes, we know the changes that we need to see. Question is, how do we get those changes in the present climate of Jamaica? How do we get those changes? The whole world is changing, gentlemen. You can see it. All over the world. One of the reasons Rattigan spoke about corruption and bringing the corrupt politicians to answer for what they have done. How do we get there in the present climate? In
sound.
I think she's having some problem. But she raised a very important question. How do we get there in the current climate? And immediately when she raised that question, I was thinking about Rattigan Foundation, One Jamaica Defense Fund as one farm. I think, would you say that's a practical way, Mr. Rattigan? The Jamaica Defense Fund as one farm?
Yes, indeed. And let me just
Let me
take
bring her
this.
back in. I'm bringing her back in.
I'm back
Okay.
in. I'm back in.
Yeah, she's back.
Yes, in
Yeah.
the United States, the media
Oh,
has been
okay,
very,
finish.
very active in letting the public know the corruption, the effect of corruption, etc., etc. The media we have today is not independent of government. And you need to know that. We have lost, our media has lost that ability. So the question, Mr. Rattigan, is how do we get to some of the places that we need to get to? Because we can talk forever,
Right.
you know,
Well,
but we need to, at this time in our country, we need to effect some change. How do we get there? What are the
okay.
instruments that we need to use? What are, if we have to build them from the bottom up, how do we get there?
Okay. Was it you, Nita, who mentioned the One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation? I think
Yeah,
it was.
I
Okay.
did.
Ms. Nita, to answer your question directly, we started, I say we because it's a collective, we started an organization in the US called One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation. And we're collecting 100 US dollars. We're reaching out to Jamaicans and friends of Jamaicans and friends of Jamaica all across the globe to make a contribution of a minimum of 100 US dollars. Or if you cannot afford it, whatever you can. If you can afford more, fine. And it serves at this point three purposes. One, to bring lawsuits where necessary, wherever we can find jurisdiction against the government of Jamaica, this government and subsequent governments of Jamaica, for corruption activities, or not even, well, more than just corruption activities, wherever we can find that they're not acting in accordance with the will of the people or with their mandate, we will bring lawsuits forcing them to do so. And like I said, whether it's in the US, UK, Canada, Jamaica, wherever. Second, we plan to do a series of public relations campaigns. For example, Jamaicans don't have unfettered right to beaches. And what we would like, what I foresee is a public relations campaign where we can do sandals type commercial, but show black people behind the gates of the resorts looking at the beaches and cannot go in, and therefore we can put a tick at the bottom saying these people outside the gates, their forefathers, their ancestors fought for this country, right? And they don't have rights to the beaches, but somebody from Europe or the Far East or wherever can come and enjoy the beaches. That's two. Third, and probably the most important thing, is that we plan to conduct investigations of uh, politicians suspected of ill-gotten gains. And when we say suspected of ill-gotten gains, we know that the Integrity Commission is doing its job or trying to do its job, but that job is primarily centered in Jamaica. Now, we have a strong belief that a lot of the money that's stolen from uh, that got to Jamaica because of donor funds and stolen. We know that most funds were wire transferred out of Jamaica, and you cannot destroy those records. And some of those people, um, they have their assets overseas, Miami, New York, Canada, wherever. We have the ability to track and trace those funds and those assets. And that's exactly what we plan to do. And so we can form a merger with the Integrity Commission and provide them with that information that they themselves don't have the ability or they're unwilling to look at. So those are the three things that we're planning to look at, to do.
Okay. All right. Yeah, worthwhile doing. Because I believe things have to be attacked from every angle. No. The Integrity Commission has to depend upon the DPP to prosecute. How do we get there in the present scenario?
Well, that's an interesting question, because if you go back and you look at the Integrity Commission Act of 2017, it gives the corruptions prosecutor the ability to conduct the prosecution subject to the wishes of the DPP. And we noticed that at the last submission, not this most recent one, but the one where the Prime Minister came under scrutiny, the corruptions prosecutor said that she didn't have enough evidence to bring charges against him, but she did against the others. But because of abuse of
Do you
process,
know where she comes from?
no, I do
She
not.
was appointed there. She was a member, a prosecutor at the DPP.
Mm-hmm.
She was seconded there
Mm-hmm.
by the DPP.
Well, here's the thing, and that's why the One Jamaica Defense Foundation is so useful, because if we can establish jurisdiction outside of Jamaica, then we don't have to worry about the DPP. There's another way of attacking the problem. And in fact, there's a recent case, and Herb can speak to this case, and I'd love for him to speak about that case coming out of Barbados. Herb, why don't you go ahead and do that, please?
The case in Barbados surrounds establishing what's that they established here in the U.S. in Miami, Will?
Jurisdiction.
Mm. And a part of the person is a dual national, and the person took the complaint through the Barbados system and could not get any satisfaction. They had lost property. There were other people who were losing their property. Part of the government was taking over idle lands and decided that they wanted this person's property and just simply took it. Now, the person took the case to the Barbados court system, and got no satisfaction. So they finally returned to Florida and sued in Florida. And under Florida law, they established the jurisdiction in the state, and were successful in not just getting the property back, but in getting millions, if not billions of dollars in Barbados funds awarded to the people who brought the lawsuit. I don't have it here in front of me, but that's the gist of that case. And we believe, based on that case, we have dual nationals, Jamaican and American citizens, that live in that state, and we could easily establish the same jurisdictional court access to bring cases like that, because this current government has been going around taking over people's property because they believe that nobody's there to pay the tax. Nobody's there to I guess take care of the property as such, manage the property. And people here in the US, they're not paying taxes, but they bequeath the property to their kids, and the kids come down ready to claim and find out there's no property. So that occurred in my family. So we're working on different aspects
And let me just
of such a case to see if we can in fact bring that suit.
Let me just add this, Herb. That's the civil action part of it. But there's also the criminal action part of it, because the FBI has what they call an international corruption unit. They have one in Miami that covers the Caribbean and Central and South America, one in New York, one in DC, and one in LA. Now, if we can show that some of these politicians accused of illegal gains, right, that they wire transferred funds, that they use the SWIFT system to transfer some of those funds, the FBI has jurisdiction and will bring action against them, whether it's in Florida or DC or wherever. So we're looking at it not just in terms of having the DPP prosecute those cases, But we're looking at it as, okay, if the DPP doesn't do what he or she is supposed to do, where else can we turn to for justice? And there are numerous venues outside of Jamaica we can turn to. So that's the function. That's one of the functions of the One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation.
Okay. I know the extent to which the FBI will go in matters that touch and concern the United States. But there has been an instance, although a lot of it is what I would say we are not fully privy to all of the information, but we know that some money was transferred from South America through the United States through First Global Bank, because we know that a bank manager was lost his job, and it had to do with members of this government. But we expected the FBI to step in. They did not.
Well, let me ask you this: was a complaint lodged?
I don't think a complaint was lodged.
Well, there
No,
you go.
I think that it passed through the United States banking system. It was noted.
Oh, there's another thing too. Well, if you have that information or whoever, once we start this, because we're waiting on, the organization has been set up already. We're just waiting for the bank to say, okay, fine, you can go ahead and open the account. But we're also going to have a telephone line, and we're also going to have secure communications where people with information can provide it in a confidential manner. Another way that we plan to address this issue is that Jamaica depends heavily on donor funds, America being the biggest donor so far. And Herb Nelson and his group, they have links to political representatives in Washington, D.C. We can get before those subcommittees and let them know what's going on. And if it means that that we have to tighten the squeeze on Jamaica so that we can get, we can get things done, then so be it. But there are lots of avenues we can address this problem. We can travel down in order to address this problem. Lots of avenues. But it just takes.
I just put the Kingland Estates case in the
chat.
See
it. Yeah.
If I can just jump in here and say a few words. One, I'm glad both Will and Herb was able to speak on the development of the fund and the work being done in that area. But another component, I think, which would be of fundamental importance, right, to any move going forward, is to start to build our connections with grassroots people in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Right? Because that is going to be the real thing that's going to sustain our work and really bring value to whatever it is that we're doing. Because the thing about it is that in many instances, this is the component that has been left out, right? We don't work among the people, and yet we may seek to be working on their behalf. And my thing is that in order to work on behalf of the people, you have to work along with the people, right? And you have to work right where they are in their community, right? Because there's much information to be gathered there, because they're the ones experiencing the hardship. They're the ones really experiencing the corruption. They're the ones who really experiencing the hard bread and butter issues. They are the heart of the economy, because that's really where the economy really thrives.
Yes, right? And they are the ones, they are the ones who don't vote on bread and butter issues. They vote on hype.
Exactly, because part of the reasons why grassroots people won't vote is because they don't find anything that connect with their interests.
And Patrick,
that's the main thing.
And Patrick, that's why we have our program. And I mean, I mean to put a plug in for my
just to complete my point, Will, before you go on. right? Because Valerie, you mentioned about media earlier on, and I just wanted to bring this up because this is really the key right now. Contrary to what you're saying, media in the US is not quite what it seems, right? Media in the US is very controlled. But be that as it is, what we're doing here, this is media. This is what has started to evolve, right, in dealing with the Jamaican situation. We have a network now of social media, right? Panelists and discussion groups and you know, really contact people, right? Because this is one of the ways that we find that we're making contact with regular people in Jamaica, right? Call you on a regular basis and discuss issues and so on and enlighten you on certain things and all of that. So this social media is something which we have to capitalize on, right? We have to build on this, you know, because this is gonna be a way that, you know, we really carry forward this thing crucially, right? My thing is that panels like this, we spread the word so that people tune in, right? People who have never heard about the program, tell them about it and let them tune in and listen and know that they can make a contribution as well, right? And they don't have to make the contribution necessarily on here, but they can write in to the program, right? A simple email or whatever it is, right? And make the connection that way. And likewise, we make more connections with people because this is how we build our, we got to build our own media. We can't, that's my whole point. We can't be relying on, right, anybody to do it for us, right? Or anybody to come along and provide a solution. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Let me just say that you're absolutely correct in that you have to connect with the grassroots people. And that's why we have a program like my program, Reason with Rattigan, because one of the things I discovered quite late, should have done it sooner, but better late than never, is that a lot of the grassroots people, they're not informed about the issues. And as Valerie says, that's what a lot of them, they don't vote tabletop issues, their issues, right? A lot of them, they're legacy voters. The grandfather voted for a certain party, father voted for a certain party, and so they're voting for the party, even though that party has done nothing for did nothing for the grandfather and the father, and is doing nothing for them. So that's why we seek to, on every Saturday at 3:00, we seek to reach out to the grassroots people, and we're making inroads to explain to them what is going on around them. For example, they're going to be asked pretty soon to vote on a referendum concerning the Constitution. Yet, I guarantee you that the overwhelming majority of them, they've never read the Constitution. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to them starting next week, and we're going to take the Constitution in segments, and we're going to bring on guest speakers and explain to them in simple, everyday language so that they, not only will they understand it, but that they can convey that message to their neighbors, right? So that they can become ambassadors of this spirit, of this movement. For another example is that bauxite. A lot of them didn't even know that the bauxite levies are not being collected over the last several years. The corruption issues regarding the fertilizer that came to Jamaica last year, where more than almost 200,000 pounds of fertilizer missing. Nobody can account for it, right? These are the things we're bringing to light, and I'm pleased and I'm heartened by the responses I see when people write in the chat that, "Why me never know so this a go on, me never know so this a go on," and so you start bringing them in one after the other, and every week the program is growing in leaps and bounds. And it's not only my program; we have other programs as well. But this is the first time in the history of Jamaica we have this phenomenon where you have so many programs designed to reach out to the grassroots people so that they can understand what's going on. Because at the end of the day, the voting population, they represent the overwhelming majority of the people who vote, but they're not voting in an informed manner. We seek to bring that to an end.
John, you've been very silent, and I wonder. See, I hear the argument, but I wonder if the fact that when you look around, it's black people robbing black people, if this is not something that turn people off from taking part in the election process. when you're looking at it, it's not the white man coming to Jamaica and dominating it. Yes, European control the economy and all that stuff, but it's your own black man brutalize you, rob you, want shot you. Don't you think those are the motivating factor that result in a low voter participation?
You're asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you that.
Well, I think there are many reasons and many factors. For lack of a better way of looking at it, the country goes through stages. The issues that we're facing now, believe me, so long as those problems are not resolved, the country is going to come to another crisis. Now, how deep, how profound, and how it's dealt with. But I always tell friends that when I go to Jamaica and I drive from the airport to go to New Kingston or wherever, it's like it don't change, right? The level of poverty, the zinc house, and the conditions that people are living in, those conditions have not changed. It's not that things have changed. So a crisis is inevitable. It may not crash. The system may not crash, but the problems that exist in it must come to a fore. Now, it's several factors that go and address it. Rattigan talk about legal action, and that is one, especially in a highly apathetic environment. Legal action is absolutely critical as one of the things that can be done. I'm not aware of some of those initiatives, but I would certainly love to get some of the information. I've heard about the program that he referred to, and I would certainly like to read about the initiatives that himself and Herb are involved in. The example of Barbados and so on, where I'm not understanding exactly what those initiatives are, but they are initiatives that are appropriate to the present time in terms of this is the period we're in. I don't think that anybody believes that demoralization comes from black people killing off black people, because we have it so long now, Nita, and we're past that. Corruption, poverty, not everybody benefiting from not everybody get to bite the cake and eat some of the cake and experiencing the good things that are available in Jamaica. It's a minority that does. And that's from when I was a teacher at Trenchtown. That don't change. So I don't know if, demoralization comes out of, I don't know what happened. It look like my screensaver keep coming on and I can't.
No, we can't see you, man. Go ahead.
You can see me, but I can't see you.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's something to think about. The truth is, struggle have to be appropriate to the time. And when Patrick is referring to the 60s and when I left university, it's a different time. It's a different period. When Walter Rodney was banned from the country, the university students marched en masse to address that that injustice. Is not this is not, you're not going to get that response today. So it's not one initiatives. It has to be several initiatives, among which you mentioned education. I mean, that's a basic one, because if the education system, they receive some data on the schools where all the students who get scholarship come from. It don't change at all from the time when I was in the union, which is 74, 75, 76. The schools that get the most scholarship are the traditional high schools. I don't see one so-called junior secondary school, because those schools, the conditions in them have not changed. It's just a name, them change the name, and that system still exists. So if you want a picnic to go to Campion or to Immaculate, you have to be in a primary school where them can get through with that scholarship. So it's not a meritocracy system, really. It still depends on the inputs that the society allow for those children to get into, quote unquote, the best schools. And we're all black. So I don't know that problem. Marcus Garvey may not have appreciated, just like, Malcolm X at the beginning did not appreciate that there are more things going on in society than just race. And at the end of his life, he did, and they killed him. And Marcus Garvey may, at a point, have that same view, but I don't know that people in Jamaica, the youths in Jamaica, have a better understanding. They may not be rallying to some sort of, to address that in the ways that we may have seen in the 60s or 70s. But I think they're aware that the difference between PNP and JLP is not that great. Corruption is not something unique to one side. And the question is how to address it, how to come out of it, how to come out of the hole.
If I can just make a point.
I want to say something on that to John.
Yeah, go ahead, Lars.
Yeah, I listen to Rattigan and I listen to Herb. And, I commend those organizations that have been formed, right, to take legal action and all of that. But I think one of the problems that we face is how to influence the development and strengthening of organizations inside of Jamaica, right? That can be there to defend some of the actions that we are talking about, right? The fact is that over the years, a lot of these organizations have broken down in Jamaica. We're talking about things like the community councils, the citizens associations, the youth clubs,
every single
all these
one
kind
of
of
them.
organizations. Yeah. So the challenge is, how do we can't represent the people by all the time by taking up the actions that they should be participating in. We can't take on all of that. The one Jamaica can deal with the legal thing and take it to a certain point. But that alone can't do it. We need the Jamaican people to feel that there's something that they can do to defend themselves, right? And defend and better the system, right? And we can't do it without trying to influence the development of these organizations on the ground. So that's that challenge that, we're going to have to face and say how we can influence that development.
Yeah. Okay. Just two things
Patrick.
to answer real quick. Firstly, Michael, with regards to the point you raised about the matter of violence and what was the other one? The in terms of the youth and their involvement. I think that's what you were talking about.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Black skilling blacks. Black skilling blacks.
Yes. Black skilling blacks and all of that. The way I understand it is, and it take me back to even my time working in the community. It should not be seen as a personal thing where it's really just black and black crime, because the crime is not something which is necessarily directed based on color, based on who you are. It is directed based on a need, our seeming need. Because what happens is that some of these youngsters just hungry and them looking for the first place them can get a bread. Whether it be at the Chinaman shop, right? Or it be, the man who just walk out of the bank with him pay in them pocket. It really don't matter to him. It's not a personal offense as far as he's concerned. It is more an opportunity, right, for him to grab whatever he can grab. It don't even give him a guarantee that him grabbing anything.
There's a big change in that.
That's how senseless. That's how senseless the crime is.
Patrick, there's a big.
No, hold on. I'm not really debating Aisha. I'm just speaking to something right now, right? It's really a matter that our approach has to be one where we're looking at youngsters in community which have absolutely no guidance, pretty much, right? A lot of them don't even attend school, or if they do attend school, may not even attend school consistently. So it's a situation where, again, we're talking about underserved, seriously underserved communities. They're not under any proper organized family structure, no proper organized anything, right? And we're looking. What we're really looking at is looking at how we uplift them out of that stage. So when you mention last in terms of what are we doing? It's not a matter of coming up with the answers here, but a matter of really addressing what needs to be addressed. Because that was said earlier on in terms of what we're gonna need to do is build contact amongst grassroots. Right now, why we're gonna build contacts among grassroots? Because the organizations don't exist in the communities, right? But we're gonna build it. However we build it, we have to start where we are. Right? That's how you build. You can't build on where you hope to be. You build that where you are and build towards moving forward. One thing about that I mentioned in terms of the 60s and the banning of the books and all of that is to show a point where there was that disconnect, where the disconnection was made from Garvey, right? And Garveyism, right? And all the things that really speak to us. Right? That was a big disconnection. Right? And that's one I can cite right off the top of my head. There are more. But again, this is what we got to look at. We got to look at how we pull together, right? And start to build.
Valerie, you're in the trench. Let me just ask a question. Valerie, you're in the trench for quite some time now. And most of the youths that you defend are from poor communities. Am I correct?
Yeah, correct.
Uh-huh. you're not seeing anybody from the upper class before the courts system charged for murder, what have you.
Rarely.
Rarely. So why is this? Why is this? You're saying that it because of the social condition, or they
You
just
mean why there are so many working class
yeah
youths? Yes, it's social. The whole social base has disintegrated. I mean, you have heard that a lot of the gunmen carry on doing what they're doing and don't expect to live beyond age 21. And it's true, they really, really believe that. There's nothing in the society for them. There's no hope of them um, achieving certain things. And so the only thing they can do is try to live for the moment. So they rob. And they rob their own communities and their own people. Because them not go uptown, go rob nobody. Because them not really have that consciousness. Them not see it that way. Is as the other John said, it's a need that is being satisfied at the time that it is needed. And so that is why socialist programs are important because poverty has risen. If you look at the statistics, poverty has risen and it is going to continue to rise.
last you wanted to say something.
The the problem, the issue I was trying to raise, with Patrick is that it's not just poverty that is generating some of the crime. A lot of it is disconnection. Just a lot of the people involved in crime now, it may have started out with them being poor and being involved with criminality and other things. But the issue has become more one of disconnection. There have been so much outside of the mainstream of society that even though a lot of them doing the scamming, selling drugs, and making money, they have been so disconnected from the rest of the society for so long that even when they're making money and they can show off with their cars and the this and that, they're still involved with the crime, right? Because the system itself, it makes such a large percentage of the youths and lower class people become so disconnected from the economics of the society, from the politics of the society, from the social resources of the society, that even when they find alternatives to make money, right, and to better themselves, they are still involved with crime, and this is part of this is a large part of what we are facing now, because a lot of the youths involved in the lottery scamming and still killing them one another. A lot of the youths who involved with selling drugs and have money and still killing them one another is because of how socially disconnected they have been because of the whole economic situation, right? So a lot of it may
It,
have started with poverty, but it is it is not right now the only reason why people are involved with criminal activity.
So if Marcus Garvey was here today, he would be disturbed when he look at the condition within the Black Atlantic. Yeah? You last?
Every leader would be
It's
disturbed. Bob Marley would have been disturbed.
You
we
believe that?
we are disturbed.
We are disturbed, exactly.
that's why we are That's why we are here. That's why we are here having this
But
discussion
Exactly,
because
yeah.
the entire social infrastructure has gone. If you think back, talk about history, historically, parents in Jamaica, no matter how poor they were, taught their children certain things: respect, hard work, depending on what belongs to you, right? None of this is there now. There's none there now because parents no longer are concerned about these things. These things are not being taught in the home. They are left for the school. The teachers don't care anymore because they're not being properly paid, and they don't see why they should take on the harassment of teaching kids the important things in life. And that keeps a society
and
going. So yes, it is
I
more than
agree with
poverty.
you. I agree with you, Valerie. I
But
agree with you, Valerie. And some of the social policies that the government formulate is contributing to that too. When you look on housing policy at all the governments in the last 30, 40 years, they prefer to build new housing schemes than developing Trenchtown or Jonestown
yeah,
or Greenwich
yeah,
Farm or all those places
yeah.
because
But
it
Mike,
bring them more vote and
do any
they
of
can
you
create more voting constituencies.
Okay, but
know
again,
what is actually happening to housing trusts? Do you
Tell us.
know?
Tell us.
Housing trust is no longer a vehicle to supply homes for those who can't afford it. They're still taking our housing trust contributions.
Of course.
Now the new system is that the whole program has been fed to the banks, NCB,
Yes, I read about that this week.
and the one from Canada. What them name again? I don't
Nova
bank with them.
Scotia and a
Yeah.
credit union.
Okay. So what you do now? You apply for a home.
Nova Scotia.
Yes. You apply to buy a home that is on the market because NHT has not built any low income houses in the longest while. Why? They don't have the funds because the government takes the funds and use it for other things. So when you apply for a loan, they say you qualify, they approve it, and they say, okay, so the house is 22 million. We approve you for 9 because it's two of you, so the two of you together will get 9 million. And you must go to the bank to get the rest.
Wow.
When you pay your monthly mortgage, the money goes into the bank, and the bank doesn't send it to NHT. That money stays there, and NHT sends to the bank. They approve the portion they approve as loan. NHT that was created by Michael Manley for poor people is being abused. And the
Yeah, but
Jamaican people don't even know.
but the thing about it is that I think one of the things that we gotta watch what we're doing is that we can't sit here and discuss week after week all the problems that exist. But is
Yep.
that what we want to do?
No.
That's not what we want to do. The last
We
time
know
I
what
checked,
we know what the
I'm not
problems
seeing.
are.
Yeah, but
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And what I'm speaking to last is really in terms of how do we really address this? Because nobody here is seeking to become representational, become government, right?
No.
But what we're looking at is how we can change the situation from the bottom up. Too much we have been focused on the top down because the top down is really where the problem is, right? You can't vote anybody in for solve our problem. We gotta be a part of the solution. That is the connection I'm talking about, making with grassroots people, right? So that we lift them up.
Yeah, so we have to repair
That is
the
really what we're
social.
talking about.
Yeah, we have to repair the social infrastructure and the family life from the bottom up, so that people can be more aware of what they need to do.
Yeah. That's what Garvey stood for.
Mm-hmm.
And the People's National Party issued a commitment this week that they're going to introduce the teaching of Marcus Garvey in the school system. I saw something from Mark Golden to that effect. But I wonder if that is just a word sound rather than a strong commitment to the teaching of Marcus Garvey within the school system.
There was nothing that stopped teachers teaching Marcus Garvey. There's nothing that prevented them teaching civics. The Ministry of Education didn't say you mustn't do this and it mustn't be part of your program.
Good point.
So I mean, I think that is just election.
You have students at Garvey who have retired, right? Have books out there which nobody seems to be able to access and all of that. We need to start tapping into those things and bringing them back out. People like Professor Rupert Lewis and all of that, who was a Garvey scholar and wrote extensively about Garvey, right? His book costs a fortune here in the US. But again, it's not a book that is readily available, right? We need to bring our books back in print. We need to bring them back in print, not just for them to be available, but to utilize them. Because this is really what we want to do.
Well,
Yeah.
we one of the things that is obvious is that we need to get into the communities and we need to have a program to address some. We can't do everything one time. Some of these issues, because the educational system isn't doing what they're supposed to do.
I was just going to comment on that, Valerie. You know, the education system has been very much broken since the current prime minister was education minister. If anybody has not noted that's a key fact. Well, Michael had developed education and provided so many instruments to pay for your education all the way to university level, right? The gentleman who was in the education ministry did away with that program. He stopped the tuition payments. And all of a sudden, students are in a mad scramble to learn. The other thing was, in underserved communities, we consistently graduate a little over 40% of high school seniors. They're not getting a full education. And so what you look at is, when you drop out of school, what do you have available to you other than the gangs with open arms to welcome you?
Yeah,
So,
Rattigan, did you know that this constitution, the Charter of Rights, states that every Jamaican child has a right to education? So maybe we need to look at that and to see if we don't need a court action that insists that certain things be taught in school as a right to a child, as an educational right.
I agree with you.
It is there. We're not using it. I don't think many people even know it exists.
There are lots of things we're not using in this constitution.
Right.
Yes.
Lots of things, and I find
Lots
it to be
of things.
I find it to be an interesting document. Like, I'm just looking at, just as an aside, I was just looking at something here, and it talks about a fine. Says that if you vote in Parliament and you're unqualified, you shouldn't vote, then the fine for every day that you sit in Parliament is £10. I find it remarkable that our constitution still have a
The pound.
currency in £10. You know, but that's in chapter 5, entitled Parliament, section 37, subsection. No, sorry, chapter 5, part 1, subsection 46. And it mentions it liable to a penalty of £10 for each day upon which he or she he so sits or votes. And I'm just wondering, when Mr. Vaz was in the parliament and he was unqualified to sit because of his dual citizenship, did they fine him the £10 for every day that he was there?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No.
But you're right.
And Ratigan, that goes for a lot of our legislation that has teeth. It is the people who use it that causes it to have no effect. Do you know, when the government sets up a Zozo, that after the Zozo comes to an end, well, once they set it up, they must begin to put in social programs?
Yeah.
They never
What
do
you say?
that.
Set up
That's
a
the
what?
bill portion.
Yeah, because it's clear,
Yes.
hold and build. So to clear it of the
Yes.
bad people, you hold it so that they don't come back, and then you build and you put in
And
the
then
social
you
program.
build social
Right.
programs.
Right. That's not happening.
It's not happening.
True. That's another lawsuit.
I think what is emerging, I think Ratigan and Valerie need to have a talk off the line. You know, there might be some opportunities to advance something. So I think both of you should.
I would take the word might out of that statement.
All right.
Well, let me tell you this.
Should link up.
Some time ago, a group of lawyers got together with a view to pursuing legal action in instances like this. What happened was that they couldn't get the funding. It's very expensive. It's going to require a lot of detailed work. And that was one of the obstacles. But certainly we can look back at it and see, because there's a lot of stuff that can be done.
But Varia, I submit to you, Dr. Canute Kelly, Professor Clayton, Professor Taylor, and there's another professor that has done research Caribbean wide and gas and stuff. These gentlemen are well documented and well aware of these issues. So I'm at a loss that, okay, let's say now that we have the legal fund and we're going to build that. We need to have them rally around the flag one more time to make this a reality, right? Because if people can see the future, they can see that there are people that have a natural concern for the welfare of Jamaica, and they want to see our education system work. Everything we're talking about is based on a failure to educate our folks, based on a failure to teach values and civics and everything else to our youngsters. And we have a group of youngsters coming up that show no mercy or no favors or nothing to neither the parents nor the teachers, right? They lose total respect for them.
Yeah.
Can I say this? I think we have a great opportunity now,
Yeah.
if we can come together in a serious way to ensure that constitutional reform fits the agenda that it needs to fit. Because I can tell you that this government, under the Minister of Constitution, or whatever her name is, they are seeking to
Somebody
manipulate
needs to
it.
mute. They're talking over you, Vari. We need to mute everybody.
Let me tell you, the Constitution is a good weapon to get this country to a place we need to get it to. And I'm very concerned that we are taking it too lightly. And if we can make some inroads in the Constitution, like, for example, every Jamaican has a right to have access to the beach. Let's take something as simple as that. All those walls that a hotel built to exclude people will have to come down.
Yes.
And they will have to build pathways to let us get to the beaches.
Yes, indeed.
So the Constitution is a very serious instrument that we can begin. And I don't want us to drop the ball. And this government wants us to drop the ball because they know what they can do with it. And the opposition is not in the least bit concerned because they don't understand the value.
Did you see the pushback from the Constitutional Reform Committee this week?
Yes, that was in relation to.
Valerie?
Yes, was that in relation to?
They would say that what you. They were. What they were talking about is like what you are saying now. They're saying that kind of talk is bullying. You're bullying the Constitutional Reform Committee. Dr. Nadine Spence.
But they need to be bullied. It's our Constitution.
She came out from
it's for the people.
Yes, that's. But she don't think so. She thinks you guys
we need
the
diaspora to speak on it. We need to go around and let the people understand what it is. We need to pressure government. We need to, because they are going to do some things with that Constitution you cannot even imagine.
Of course. Of course.
So now that it's on the table, we need to look at it seriously.
I think
it may require us to go to court again.
I think what happened with the Constitution.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what happened with the committee. Valerie, is that initially they probably thought that all that was needed was to change from the Governor General representing the Queen, and that was it.
Yes.
But since then they have realized that too many of us are making some deep recommendations, to alter the Constitution that they so love. So whatever we're saying to them sounds like bullying right now.
Yeah, well, they need to be bullied. This is our opportunity, Rattigan. This is our opportunity to really get something meaningful done, because that door is not going to open again for a long time, another 100 years.
Look, when I find when I say find this meaning the Constitutional Reform Committee, I find it to be an insult and also a joke. The way it's organized, structured, and the way it's delivering its message. Because if you can't explain to people the difference between entrenched, especially entrenched, and normal changes to the Constitution, how the hell do you expect them to vote in an informed manner about the provisions that you're trying to enact? People don't know these differences, and they need to know. And take, for example, what they recently did with the DPP, right, where they extended the time period, the term of office it went from 60 to 65. It was 60 with one extension up to 65. They gave her an extension for 3 years, and now they were trying to give her an extension for 2 years, but they realized that you can only get one extension. So what they did, they amended the Constitution. And it's an amazing thing because they amended it while the Constitutional Reform Committee is still trying to figure out what should be amended. And they went ahead and they did it. And I'm not even sure that, because they were supposed to have 2/3 of the votes of each houses. And I'm not sure they got the votes in the Senate unless somebody crossed the line. Because can you explain that to me, Valerie? Because I thought it was 2/3.
I'm in the dark like you. We have been asking, and there's been no transparency as to exactly what happened.
Yeah, because the Constitution specifically says for something like that, you need 2/3 votes of both houses. And it's impossible for them to get a 2/3 vote in the Senate unless a member of the opposition crossed over. So I don't know how that happened, but there's so many things here that should be explained. And at this breakneck pace that they're going at to reform the Constitution, I just find it amazing. Let's harken back to 2016. 2016, the Prime Minister and the Governor General in his throne speech said that they were going to table legislation um, for the term limits for the office of the Prime Minister. 2016, we still haven't seen that legislation. It was in 2016 that they also said they're going to table legislation for the removal of the Queen as the head of state. We still haven't seen that. So why is this breakneck pace right now to reform the Constitution? In fact, some people have made very strong argument that we should just abolish the constitution in its entirety and come up with something brand new. And I've seen at least two constitutions I've seen floating around. Um, Complete constitution for Jamaica. I don't know if the government has taken a look at any of these two or both of them. I don't know. But it just seems to me that they're going about it the wrong way. And getting back to what Michael said about black people killing black people, sometimes I take a step back and I kind of wonder about that. Because if you have a population that's 92% black, it's it's more likely than not that you're going to have black committing crimes against black people. Or any community where you have the overwhelming majority being of a particular persuasion, you're going to have crimes committed against them. I don't hear about white
Definitely.
committing crimes against whites, even though we know that happens. We know that happens. So I don't know if that's a function of the media to just say, look at all these black people. You know, they're terrorizing, pillaging, raping, committing all kinds of
Typical practice. Typical practice
Right.
of the media.
So it might be a media thing because, yeah, for us to say it and then focus on that, it takes away the attention from the fact that white people commit crimes against white people too, and we don't hear about those. And I saw some statistics recently, and it didn't show that they were committing crimes in less proportion than black people committing crimes against blacks. So I kind of just, when I hear a statement like that, I kind of like just put it to the side and say for further consideration because I don't know if it's entirely true. What I do know is true is that if you have 92% of the population being black, then there's a strong likelihood, there's a greater likelihood that most of the crimes will be committed by blacks against blacks.
Conflicts. Yeah, yeah.
John,
Yeah.
you're silent. You have anything to say on so far on what Ratigan
No,
and Valerie been
part
saying?
of my role here is to listen, not just to offer commentary. I'm listening very keenly and taking some notes. Because I'm looking at the big picture. I get a feel from everybody based on what they're saying and what's going on. I don't have anything different to add. I think the question really is what steps can be taken in the current environment to advance the cause of Marcus Garvey. I think that's what it boils down to. And
Exactly.
I think we have identified a few, and there are a couple others that we may want to consider. There's one in my head really, because leadership, when I use the word transformative leadership, I'm not talking about from the government or from a politician. Leadership begins at the, whether it's at the community level. Many of the organizations which I knew as a teacher don't, during Manly time, Son Manly, those things don't exist anymore. Community associations, parent teachers associations, student councils, they are defunct. And part of the challenge for the youth, including youth clubs, sports activities that youth clubs used to do. When those things existed, there was some, there was more commitment, more organization, more motivation. When those things become defunct, it's a challenge all around. And the question becomes, what can be done now to get things back up? It may not be at a level. It will not be at a level that we may have been used to, but it's a level, and we have identified definitely about this constitutional um, constitutional reform, and I think I can easily access the Constitution online, because one of the things we should consider in our initiatives where that is concerned is where can we enhance the role of the ordinary grassroots people in that kind of reform. I mean, it's not just what you said. Somebody said about just not just changing to getting rid of a prime minister, but making the country more, even if it's not something that people will immediately be drawn towards. For example, the right to recall. I always remember that as a key right. Community, what are the provisions to recall a member of parliament? I don't know if that anything in there is related to that, but that comes to mind right away, because it helped to enhance the power of the grassroots. But there are some other areas I'd like to put my head to. The organizing question, um, but I've only taken some notes. And remember, I told you I have to leave a little early.
Yes.
I
So
have a 6 o'clock
okay.
appointment, which is almost now. So
So
I want, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say goodbye.
well, we're wrapping up now, about now, because we have spent a long time on this topic. So I think if there's nothing more to add or change or what have you, I would want to say thanks to all of you for taking part. And it was really attended, because I'm seeing we have listeners, 320 individuals listening to the conversation. So we had a good discussion. And again, Valerie and Rattigan must link up. And Herb, that conversation must take place, because I think Valerie's throwing out something at you, Rattigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so please follow up on that. Same with Herb.
Well,
Because
let me just give you all my phone number. Everybody uses it. I have no private life.
okay.
It's 382-9174.
And 876 era code.
876, yes.
You know, Valerie,
Email Valerie, email.
Yeah,
It's
email,
very
and
easy.
I
It's
wanted to hear about the Ratigan, the organization you're talking about, defense fund thing.
yeah, One
If you
Jamaica
can,
Legal Defense Foundation.
right, just send
Yeah.
me. Don't you have a way to send out everybody email, Nito? I recall the last time you did that,
I
or
can do
somebody
that.
did it.
I can do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that will
Yeah,
be gotten to you, John.
yeah.
yeah.
yes.
But
And
John, before you,
Michael, you have my email, right?
Yes.
but John,
Yeah.
before you go, I just want to highlight something. It just occurred to me, right? In light of what the government did with the amendment to the Constitution for the DPP, Section 1 of the Constitution, right? Section 1, subsection 2, it says, subject to the provisions of sections 49 and 50 of this Constitution, if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution shall prevail, and the other law shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. Now, I went to section 49 and 50, and they don't apply. So what should have happened is that civil service law that says you can go up to 65, that's inconsistent for the DPP. That's inconsistent with the Constitution, and therefore no amendment should be enforced to change the Constitution to comply with the civil service law, because it's subordinate to the Constitution. And I don't know why I don't hear people making this argument in Jamaica.
Because that mistake has been made more than once in the past in terms of where they come up with laws which supersede the Constitution, and that's one of the reasons why the Constitution is such a flawed document.
You have a point there. Point well taken.
Ratigan, you are aware that Michael Hilton, King's Counsel, has filed documents to have the court declare what they did, the amendment, null and void.
Yeah, I'm aware of the lawsuit.
All right. If I can get copies of the document, I will let Michael have it and he can circulate it.
Please.
Okay. On that note, again, my second time, thank you all for taking part. And I hope to see you next Sunday, same time, same place. Mr. Radigan, I know you enjoyed this discussion. All right, guys, see you.
All right.
Okay, Michael.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right.
John, take care.
Yeah, man. Oh, you come out of this now. Leave studio.
Yep.
Yes, man. Yeah.